Hello, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We had some last-minute technical issues. Even after 1.5 years of digital events, of course, some things can always go wrong. So welcome, everyone. Great to have you with us today in this webinar on data centers as part of a decarbonized energy system. We are very lucky to have some interesting speakers with us here today. We have Gail Souchet, the new business models manager at Schneider Electric, and Kieran Ford, the data center market segment leader from Eaton. Myself, I'm Leila Sawyer, head of business development at smartEn, and also my colleague Nale Barbieri, who will be providing communications and technical assistance today. He will also be managing questions, so in case you have any questions during the presentations, we would encourage you to ask them through the questions function of Livestorm, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. So data centers are a very interesting topic for the energy transition and for smartEn. Oh yeah, here is a brief program for today. smartEn, if you allow me to briefly introduce our organization, is the Business Association for Demand-Side Flexibility and for better matching supply and demand in the grid. And we want every decentralized energy resource or prosumer to be able to play an active role in the energy transition and to be rewarded for the value that they are providing to the energy system. And as such, data centers are a very significant distributed energy a resource that could become key providers of flexibility in more renewable energy system. Now, why is this important? As you are all aware, the EU is becoming more ambitious, including the commitment to reduce 55% of net greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Achieving these goals will require the active participation of all players in the energy system, including energy-intensive industries and data centers. So the ICT sector differs from many other energy-intensive industries in that it is already highly electrified. In the past few years, we've seen that many hyperscale data centers operators are already very ambitious in their climate and clean energy goals and are leaders in terms of clean energy procurement, energy efficiency, and other clean energy technologies. But with that in mind, data centers have the opportunity to even further expand their contribution to the decarbonization of the energy system. So with appropriate market signals, data centers could become one of the key providers of flexibility services to the grid. A Danish study from 2014 estimated that a 60 megawatt data center consuming 500 gigawatt hours per year in Denmark could provide 22 megawatts in demand response, while another study calculated that the theoretical potential for demand response from data centers could constitute 40 to 80% of the installed power by 2030. So this is why we as smartEn have been looking at this topic and have prepared a publication featuring best practices. So in this paper, we look at 3 ways in which data centers are contributing to the decarbonization of the energy system. Firstly, this can be done by using more green energy to power data centers. Many companies are now shifting away from simply purchasing enough renewable energy to just cover the annual consumption of energy and looking at how they can buy renewable energy that is produced when and where it's actually being used. So this can mean both a shift in how you purchase electricity as well as a shift in when you actually use the electricity. So for data centers, this could be done through the flexibility from the actual building, as well as from the computational tasks. So to use this to better match when and where you use renewable electricity. So secondly, this can be done by providing valuable system services to the electricity grid, which our 2 speakers are going to tell us more about. So the grid can continue to incorporate more and more renewables. Lastly, since the energy transition will require full decarbonization of the energy system, including other sectors, data centers can also provide heat to other sectors. And in the future, this can also be done in a more dynamic way. So it makes sense for smart electricity grids and smart thermal grids to respond to one another, and in that way achieve optimal solutions for the individual sector as well as the overall energy system. And of course, I would welcome you to have a look at the cases presented in our publication that further illustrate these broad categories of actions that data centers can take. So what you can also see from these case studies is that many of these strategies are already being implemented. However, to strengthen these business models, it is now also crucial to further eliminate existing regulatory barriers and shape enabling frameworks for the active participations of energy end users, so including energy-intensive industries. What we've seen in the past years at an EU level, the electricity market design has already set the right principles and now member states are being called on to make it happen at a national level. So in addition, what we see going forward, revenue streams are needed to reward end users for the activation of their distributed flexibility and for their participation as a prosumer. This needs to be promoted through proper EU legislative framework. So the revision of the Renewables Directive, for example, currently taking place, should incentivize a real-time 24/7 flexible consumption of renewable energy. The data center sustainability indicators in the revised Energy Efficiency Directive should enhance the activation of distributed flexibility and in this way contribute to overall system efficiency, not just the efficiency of an individual data center. So these are some of the short-term EU legislative opportunities that EU policymakers should grasp in order to support a cost-effective achievement of the 55% emission reduction target, and also to increase industrial competitiveness of energy-intensive industries, which is also something that the EU wants to promote in their EU industrial strategy. So without further ado, I would like to present Gaël Souchet, a new business models manager at Schneider Electric, who will now share his screen with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leila. So let me share my screen first and share this one. Should be okay. I have no response. Sorry, it was working well just before. Can you hear me still?
Yes, Gaël.
Okay. I have some issues sharing my screen. It does not answer.
Gaël, you could start your presentation and I will share the screen.
Yeah, if you don't mind, because on my side it looks like it's locked, the sharing the screen. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's the live effect. So yeah, so it's I can't see anything. Well, so the idea for us within Schneider Electric, and we do have a solution that is called the Dispatchable UPS, and we consider this UPS as an entire part of an ecosystem that we will dispatch as a DER, as a distributed energy resource. And if you move to the second slide, Leila. So the dispatchable UPS for us is really a move or a shift from the legacy UPS and the traditional way we've been using the UPSs since 40, 50 years now, which was quite of a top-down and connected to the grid, and we supply critical loads, and that's it. Today, it's really a shift for us to a new core grid interactive system, where we will consider the UPS as an entire part of a local or more global ecosystem, where the UPS will be controlled, will be dispatched as another DER. That can be solar panels, wind turbines, whatever, and we will be able to manage this UPS locally to make it recharge or discharge the batteries depending on the different demands we'll have. And for us, for Schneider Electric, that's really the way to enable the decarbonization, by including better on the customer side or more globally renewable energies, and we spoke about solar panels, wind turbines, even local storage, in order also to be able to use as less as possible, or to totally remove the gensets from a configuration, for a powertrain configuration. That's how we consider the enablement of the decarbonization on site, and of course at the data center level. If we move to the next slide. Thank you. So the solution for us is made of three things: the UPS and the power conversion of it, the Galaxy V series for us. It's also consists of a lithium-ion energy storage, because we will see this, that if you want to take the full benefit of this capacity, of this new capacity, we need to involve a new type of storage. And when we say that we can discharge or recharge the battery quite heavily, that does not work with any type of storage. So we need to have a very specific one, the lithium-ion batteries. And there's a third layer, which is the key one for us, and it's what we call the EcoStruxure Microgrid Advisor, the EMA software, that will help managing all the electrical assets within a customer site. And based on what you just said also at the beginning, Leila, we also have another layer where we can also deal and dispatch and deal with the manage the heat, for example. It's not only based on the electricity side, we can also manage the heat or the water. We have different levels, but for this specific topic regarding the decarbonization, we will speak about only the electrical area. And then the UPS will be included in this local ecosystem that is also known as microgrid, and we see that we speak about more and more microgrid today. And if we want to move forward this new energy landscape and the way to use electricity differently and decarbonize the electricity, we need to enable many different new type of energy production, and this is something that we can manage through this software, and use the UPS plus the storage as a I would say as a local storage to supply or absorb some energies when it's needed. And if we move to the next slide, please. So in terms of use case, so the UPS is very known for the traditional use case, which is based on the resiliency. Of course, we still want the critical loads and critical systems to be backed up with some energy. That's really the base of the UPS usage. But on top of this, and thanks to the new type of lithium-ion storage plus the EcoStruxure Microgrid Advisor software, we can add another level of control and of dispatch to add some potential new revenue stream, as well as also some future-proof enablements like the virtual power plants, etc. We are ready. This system is quite flexible, and we can add in the future new capacities on top of what is already existing. If we move to the next slide. So in terms of usage, we just thought that we also need to have a specific storage based on lithium-ion batteries that have the capacity to have much more cycles compared to the VRLA batteries, for example. We also have the capacity to charge and discharge them and control the level of energy. And that's a key point as well, because as we also saw, we need to have a minimum level of battery to support the critical operation of the UPS, which is the resiliency, to support the critical load. And on top of it, we can have a specific amount of battery dedicated to the supplemental use cases. That can be tariff management, demand response, frequency support, depending on the areas, depending on the countries, depending, of course, on the customer need and customer willingness to support the grid. We do have many different ways to achieve it, and this is fully controlled by the software, and we will always keep a minimum level of battery for the critical loads, and the rest can be used to monetize, to decarbonize, of course, but also to monetize the infrastructure. If we move to the next slide. So the EcoStructure microgrid advisor is really the core of this system. We do have many different use cases available today already, and we can make it change in the future, and we can have many different evolutions. The picture you see in the middle, which is the way it's addressed, and you can see this on the right hand side of a small picture, that we can manage not only the electricity, as we said, but also the heat. And that's really also the core and the very important point in this area, that we can also manage not only the electricity, but decarbonization can also be on the cooling side, and we do have also the capacity to manage the heat in a data center, thanks to this software. If we move to the next slide. So this is an overall view of what a building can be, and every different systems that we can aggregate and that we can include and incorporate in our software, and not only the UPS, of course, that can be the renewable energies, local storage, the full powertrain, of course, with a total control on top of it, and also the load management. We can also control the critical and non-critical loads, for example, to switch them off if we don't need them. That can be part also of this control. Control, of course, of the storage, and we can decide to discharge the batteries or recharge the batteries when it's needed. That's really part of the entire solution to move forward the decarbonization and really help our customers to deal with this. That's all I wanted to share with you today. Thanks a lot for this offering us this possibility to present our solutions. And I will leave the floor to my colleague now.
Thank you, Gael. Just maybe before we move on to Kiran, we have a question. What kind of analytics and reporting are available for in the offering that you just presented in the EcoStructure?
So we do have a lot of different analytics and different, I would say, curves and data available that can deal with the electricity consumption. Of course, we monitor also the voltage, current, etc. We can also integrate some specific assets like the electricity cost, the weather forecast, for example, because we can also schedule what will be, for example, the power, the solar panels production based on the weather forecast. We can do the same with the wind turbines. Everything is monitored, and then you will be able to decide, or the system will be able to decide, when will be the best moment to use maybe store energy in the batteries, then discharge the batteries from the batteries when, for example, cost of electricity from the grid is higher, or there is less production from the solar panels or the wind turbines or whatever. So there's a lot of different analytics available. Some of them are standard. We can also add some specific ones on specific customer requests, for example. We do have this flexibility.
So, just to clarify, the UPS, the battery pack of the UPS, your system treats that just the same as a battery pack in another situation. So it's just using your existing application for data centers.
Yes, that's something that we can achieve, and we can install this system on an existing installation. There is no need of changing the UPS or whatever. If needed, we can have a firmware upgrade of the UPS, but the system is ready. We just add a specific box to control the UPS that we call the EMA box, and that will be the link between the UPS and the EMA software. But we can install this on an existing installation without any upgrade, I would say, or hardware upgrade on the UPS. You don't need to change the UPS.
Okay. Well, I think there are more questions coming in, but let's take those questions at the end. Let's move to our colleague Kieran Ford from Eaton, and he should be able to share his screen, but if not, then I will share it from here.
Right. Thank you, Leila. Thank you, Gail. Are you seeing my screen okay?
Not yet. I stopped sharing mine.
Okay.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, super. And once again, thank you for the invitation to talk with you today. And I think myself and Gail are very much of one mind in terms of the and smartEn on where things are going in generally with respect to data center as being a potential distributed energy resource. Specifically, what I wanted to talk about in the next couple of minutes is really how you can commercialize the frequency response for the UPS system within the data center category. Eaton has an overall umbrella strategy to consider with fresh eyes all distributed energy reserves and to see things as part of an overall enhanced grid system. So no longer do we sit in the situation where consumers are just passively consuming energy. We certainly want to embark on a vision where those consumers can indeed be elegant prosumers and be more active participants on the grid, liberating some of the latent potential they have in their systems. And whether that's a commercial building and EV charging, or whether it's heavy industry facilities. But one of the key areas for us is data center, because we feel by harnessing the capacity already designed into the data center and liberating that for good effect onto the overall grid system, it means not only in terms of a potential new revenue stream, it really, for us, it means the ability for a transmission system operator to accelerate the adoption of renewables and to safely accelerate the adoption of renewables and increase that energy mix. So in many ways, the data center can evolve from not only being the center of our digital economy, but a great enabler of the decarbonisation of energy and accelerate us on the path to decarbonisation. The UPS certainly, and its backup battery system, plays a critical role in the data center. And it's this bidirectional relationship that we've been able to harness inside the UPS and the battery system. And Eaton has quite a long history in this regard, right down to the specific power electronics in the system itself, because it's all about that response time and that frequency of the power electronics itself, as well as the embedded firmware to give that functionality. And it started off really in 2012 when Eaton first embarked on the Green Data Net project, looking at how data centers and renewables can operate in a more energy efficient and green way. It was soon followed by our UPS team in Finland really exploring the energy reserve concept on how we could elegantly harness the backup systems in the data center community for the renewable use and renewable adoption. Around 2015, they identified a specific application of frequency regulation as being a priority, because it's not necessarily obvious to a data center operator that they could indeed participate on the grid in this way. In many ways, it's counterintuitive, and data center operators have spent literally billions designing data centers to be independent of any grid event. So to now introduce the concept that they could help support the grid is quite a radical change. But identifying frequency regulation means that the impact on the data center operator is absolutely minimal, and yet the contribution to grid stability is phenomenal. So that's where the team zeroed in on fast frequency response and frequency containment as an application. Led to a pilot in 2016 with Fortum, and very successful. And then Microsoft itself engaged in analyzing a grid interactive UPS in its labs in 2018, which followed on with Eaton electing to put its own headquarters here in Dublin to go live for grid services using the UPS systems in the headquarter building itself. So to demonstrate that we were willing to put our own critical systems in use for this purpose. And that had a tremendous effect in helping changing the psychological barrier to the use of data centers as a distributed energy system, leading to a very, very considerable project with Base Farm operating in the fast frequency response market in the Nordics. One other key milestone we see on our journey from way back when has been in 2021, a very in-depth white paper that I would bring to the audience's attention from Microsoft and Eaton, which really gets into the specifics and the mechanics of how to do this from an electrical system perspective without impacting the data center and maximizing the impact on the overall grid system. So quite a long journey, and quite a lot of detailed engineering has gone into the specifics of the UPS and the battery systems itself, and how that can actually interact with the grid and the power aggregators that are needed in order to realize such a system. So it resulted in a number of projects snowballing from that event. I mentioned the Eaton House headquarters with our partner NLX entering into the DS3 market. We have a Hyperscale project pending in the Irish market. We have 2 projects already active in 3 projects already active in Sweden, other projects in Finland and in Norway. And it's no surprise that the Nordics, with their high renewable orientation, and Ireland with its concentration of data centers, and of course being an island synchronous system, are early adopters of this technology. But we anticipate that as the energy mix changes across the centralized synchronous system in Europe, you will see more and more adoption of this, specifically, we feel, for data centers on the fast frequency response area. Another important visualization, if you like, is to stand back and look at the concentration of data centers across Europe. So we read all the headlines about data centers opening up with large capacities, but to actually take a European look at how this can actually be harnessed. We commissioned some research with Bloomberg New Energy Finance to really take a systems approach to the overall transmission system, looking at the whole area of what is the real potential of data centers to contribute in an effective way to the adoption of renewables and the decarbonisation of electricity. So fantastic report. I'll just give you some highlights where they really got into detail site-specific information about real live IT power consumption at country levels, identifying, for example, Ireland 54 megawatts, UK 820. Now that's live power. It's not the designed capacity power, which is much greater and represents the full potential, but it's live power. So they did a deep dive on that and then started to study, well, what would that look like by 2030? And here you can see an incredible expansion in data center power consumption, and in parallel to its consumption, its ability to participate on the grid increases as its overall consumption increases, making it a more and more attractive distributed energy resource to potentially be harnessed. They identified in the report not just the UPS, but the other mechanisms where data centers can actually play in terms of grid flexibility, be that in its own on-site generation, load shifting, or time shifting, identifying nearly 25 gigawatts of potential capacity for grid flexibility. Overall, we do consider, though, a fraction of that will become available. And we're on a campaign with smartEn and others to promote the psychological, the dissolution of the psychological barrier which is preventing large energy users like data centers to entering into this flexibility market and becoming a real part of the solution to decarbonisation. Just looking at fast frequency, because I zoned in on that particularly, looking at some key markets of UK, Germany, Ireland, Netherlands, you can easily see graphically here how the latent capacity of the data center sector meets or indeed can exceed the fast frequency requirement in those individual markets. So it seems a natural and perfect fit that data centers with a minimal impact to their overall operations, having a tremendous impact and benefit to the grid operator by providing frequency containment measures in their respective markets. So I guess in summary, we align very much, I think, Leila, with your opening comments, we would be very much aligned with that and aligned with Bloomberg's summary points in that to unlock the flexibility in data centers is going to require improved flexibility incentives to access the markets, to make it an easy to enter market and communicate all the environmental benefits. Because let's face it, it's not just about the additional revenue stream. It's nice that that will pay for the infrastructure, but it's a fraction of the overall revenue streams of these companies. What's really important is they are actively participating in the decarbonisation of electricity, allowing TSOs to rapidly increase the renewable energy mix on their grids. And I say that benefit alone really would go a long way to address the existential threat that faces us all as energy users. So, but certainly we do need new connection and planning rules to encourage that flexibility. And of course, we're greatly strong advocates for the benefits of running trials and projects so that data center operators can see that the mechanism required to participate in the grid represents such a minimal risk. In fact, it's lower than the normal routine maintenance procedures they would have on their systems today. And yet its impact could be tremendous. So with that, back to you, Leila and Gail.
Thank you, Kieran, for that presentation. I can see also some people responding in the with some celebratory thumbs up, responding to your presentation. I guess a question, some question from the audience, which was to Gail, but I guess relevant to both of you. How do data center customers respond to these concepts, and how much energy do they see that can be sacrificed for this grid stabilization, and how does that balance with the UPS, obviously their role as a emergency power supply?
I think we both said, I think, the same thing, that yeah, it's not about a sacrifice. I mean, as Karen said, it's all about everybody has to make the small step to move forward, right, and to help including more and more renewable energies into the grid, and that's really the key point. So it's not about sacrificing. I guess we all run the same, and we always maintain the minimum level of batteries of storage for the critical load. So it's not putting at risk the critical loads. It's just helping and being part, and everybody will make the effort, and we enable these efforts. So it's not about sacrificing. So it's really a setup. I mean, if you need 5 minutes, if you need 10 minutes, if you need only 1 minute of backup for the critical loads, then we can set it up, and the rest will be to support the grid and to help decarbonization by including more and more renewable energy resources.
I think just to add to that, Gail, that the many data center operators we talk to, we found it's not technical, it's not economic, it's in many cases it's not even regulatory, it's psychological. When you have data center design engineers dedicated to the resilience and protection of their primary assets and the primary function of the data center, it's a huge psychological change to think, I can use the same infrastructure for something other than its primary purpose, which is to protect the IT load. So it's a psychological change. And I think we're advocates because we feel, I don't think the data center industry should wait to be regulated in this way. I think they should be more proactive and get in ahead of regulation, because they're less likely to control that regulation. It'll come from others. So it's better to be proactive and realize that your monthly or quarterly UPS and backup power systems check is a more hazardous process going offline, rather than a elegant, automated, fast frequency response coupled into a power aggregator system, which runs autonomously and automatically with no effect on the operation. That is a very, very simple measure. And yet, for every 1 megawatt that they can make available, there's multiples of megawatts of renewables that then can be onboarded onto the grid system. So it's literally a win-win-win-win for everybody.
That sounds like very good news, Kieran. So there is still some psychological resistance, what I'm hearing, but
Absolutely.
not actually a tech. That's still a work in progress, let's say. Although we see a lot of data center operators as also being the ones to take this step, but of course not everyone does that at the same time. So one question which I think you've already answered, but it does not affect the data center to have these, to participate in, well, we don't need to go into that. I think you have already answered that. We have a question as well about a different topic, saying that Google has announced that it's going to start also a project with geothermal power to serve its regional data centers. Is that something that you are also looking into? Would that work well together with your solutions?
I think we have to look at a wide variety of renewable sources. And of course, at a systems level, everything can be engineered in. And even with that type of technology, it's the scale. We've seen so many renewable type projects and renewable energy initiatives. We've even seen companies place data centers under the ocean. There's lots of, I would say, niche renewable efforts, all to be applauded because they're all directionally correct. But we have to make sure we're solving the right problem. The right problem is the decarbonisation of electricity at grid level. So yes, you can service your own needs with, certificate of origin for renewables. You can service your own need by investing in solar parks. But what about solving the need at a grid level for everybody? I think there's a lot more to be said in terms of green credentials for data centers that contribute to the full decarbonisation of electricity at grid level, as opposed to tending to their own garden.
Well, that's very nicely spoken. We also have some questions, towards Gail. How is the market adopting this new critical hour, and what sort of megawatt and gigawatt is being deployed already?
So clearly, and as Karen said, there's two different parts in Europe, and we see a big development today in Nordics as well in the UK, Ireland, for some specific reasons. You know, that in terms of grid and grid connections, whatever, you have what we call the continental Europe, which is, I mean, France, Germany, all these countries, and the Nordics are quite specific. Denmark is cut into two parts. There's the main Jutland, Denmark, connected to continental European, and there's another part of Denmark closer to the Nordics. So in these areas, Nordics and UK, Ireland, there's a lot of demand, and it's really growing very, very fast because they do have much more problem on the stabilization of the frequency compared to the continental Europe. So it's really growing very, very fast. On our side, we do have already I would say tens and tens of megawatts deployed for this fast frequency response, what we call the FFR. And it's a specific one. For the rest, we also speak sometimes about the FCR, which is another type of frequency support. In the continental Europe, there's also different ways of supporting the frequency. The problem is not the same. And again, it's not only about the frequency support, it's also about all the other, I would say, grid services overall that we can bring on top of the frequency support. So it's not only about frequency, it's also about some other ones, like the energy storage, basically. And the problem is not the same for continental Europe and Nordics and UK, Ireland, for some reasons.
Okay, very good. I think this is another question in line with the geothermal one. So what is your view on leveraging fuel cells for data centers? Is that a potential direction to consider? We see a lot written about this, and just your question, is this another step in the right direction, or what are your views on this?
If I jump in there,
Yes.
Very much a personal advocate, as is Eaton, of hydrogen technology, and it's no great secret. At a European level, we see great moves and investment to align ourselves to hydrogen. One of the key enablers, of course, is going to be hydrogen distribution and how that can actually be managed for the big picture puzzle to be solved. But on a more granular level, absolutely, hydrogen fuel cells pose a great potential for what we call a long duration UPS. So where you can have it like a 72-hour backup system. And the coupling of a UPS with a hydrogen fuel cell as a backup system is a very elegant way for a genset replacement. So for new builds, it certainly could be considered. And that's why we've optimized and working to further optimize UPS systems in conjunction with hydrogen fuel cells for that specific application. That's for backup power. As for primary power, the real key will, I think, come in when we move to transport. Once transport kicks in for hydrogen, on the back of that, we may see a more resilient hydrogen distribution network. If that comes to fruition, I think data centers will be at the top of the queue and to onboard hydrogen gas for on-site generation for definitely backup and potentially primary power. So we definitely see hydrogen in the future. And it's just great to watch all the different players and stakeholders as that market evolves. A little early yet, but all the signs are very positive that it'll be a permanent piece of the energy landscape.
Yeah, We just add on top of this that that's also something a trend that we are working on our side, and clearly there's a need, there's a potential usage in this area. Of course, it really depends on the need, on the backup. It's pure resiliency or long backup. If we speak about 48, 20, 72 hours, for sure, batteries will not be the right solution. Batteries can fit up to 1-2 hours. But then if we need more and really replace the genset as it is today, then yes, fuel cell can be a good solution. Maybe not fully ready yet. And there's also something on top of what Karen said, that for us, it's also considering the hydrogen color, right? We must consider the green hydrogen. That will be the solution, right? On top of all the points regarding the distribution and how it will be connected, etc. We don't want to be part of story where we will use what we call the gray hydrogen, right? If you need to run the coal production, coal electricity production to produce the hydrogen, it's not the right solution. So we need to consider the green hydrogen in this area, and then yes, that would be part of the decarbonization for sure.
Okay, well, I'm sure our audience would be very interested to hear your view on that. I have a few more technical questions coming in about some more technical questions about the UPS. So how does this affect the capacity and lifetime of the batteries if there's more charge and discharge cycles? And then also, what is the minimum capacity requirement for the UPS for the use of the data center? And what is the advantage if you add additional battery capacity in the data center compared to installing that additional capacity elsewhere?
Well, the minimum in Nordics is 1 megawatt to enter the bidding. Then in Denmark, it's 300 kilowatt. It really depends in the countries and which player you will deal with. If you deal directly with the TSO or with some third parties aggregator like Fortum. But that's it, 1 megawatt for Nordics and 300 kilowatt for Denmark, for example. Then in terms of batteries, well, FFR and for Nordics, you will run the batteries for 30 seconds, and that will happen maybe 3, 4, 5 times maximum per year. So it's not that much in terms of cycling. We could even run the FFR in Nordics with lead acid batteries. It's not such a big risk. Then when you try and when you go to some other more intensive use cases like the FCR, for example, then of course in terms of cycles that will be much more heavy, but we can still manage it through the software layer and control the number of times you will use the batteries and put some limits. But then again, it really depends on the use cases, and we do have the batteries now that can withstand this type of would say of constraints in regards to this number of cycles, thanks to the lithium-ion batteries. So it's not such a big issue actually.
I would just add to that. Across all our trials and even our own headquarters, we would see the same. The level of activation is quite minimal. And it plays well into the overall energy management system to measure that. The battery energy management system allows for that to be essentially optimized. And the most elegant way to enter the market is via an aggregator. They can take away all the contractual headaches and the complexities of all that. And then, of course, it's their business. And it's not the data center's business to be in the energy market. So everybody can stick to what they're good at. And it's a very more simplistic way to enter the market and allow the aggregation to happen. And we agree, there's still a place for lead acid. A lot of people look at lithium because of its embodied carbon, its own carbon footprint for its generation. There isn't an elegant way for it to be disposed or recycled yet. So we still see lithium ion and lead acid running concurrently, and it's down to the specifics of the data center and the market and the system design with the client, which one you would opt for.
So not any real technical disadvantages for the battery, or very minimal. Okay.
The other part of that question related to
Yeah.
expanding. It is correct. If you want to make grid participation part of your business model, certainly sizing your storage or extending your UPS storage to function more actively on the market is a very wise thing to do, because it can be optimized as well. So that comes into the system design and how you can optimize that from a revenue perspective. But always staying well north above the IT load. There's ample excess backup potential to commercialize without going anywhere near the IT load and its safeguards. So it's a very safe way to participate in the market.
Well, that sounds very reassuring for the psychological concerns that people have. My question still, because you mentioned already, well, using UPS as part of their business model. Would you say that the business model is there already, or that's not the main incentive at the moment for people to participate in these solutions?
Oh, the business model is there, absolutely, and it's expanding. It's becoming a more attractive market as we go on. There is fluctuations in the spot price of energy. It's a traded entity. Again, another reason to go with an aggregator. You want to remove yourself from the oscillations of that market, but it's growing. And as we predict, yes, the island synchronous areas of Ireland, UK, Nordics, because of renewables, they're almost like the canary in the cage. They are a prediction of what continental Europe will be like as the energy mix increases towards renewables. It'll become a more local phenomenon. So that means these grid services are only going to grow and make it a more and more attractive market for entrants. That's why we say we would like more markets to be structured in a common way across Europe. Different products been brought into play, that it's an easy to access market for distributed energy resources. Make it simple for people to participate, and give the right balance of incentive and regulation. Not overly regulated where it's punitive. Thou shalt make your data center available. We think that goes too far. But certainly large incentives, remove the barriers, and provide a consistent framework across the European energy markets would really make this potential come into play.
Yeah, I think on top of this, and we clearly see that Nordics, UK, Ireland are much more mature than the continental Europe, but we also need to keep in mind that, for example, in France, the last report from RTE, they clearly see that there is a strong need of flexibility on the grid, and it's been really addressed, and they know that they will need this type of storage available everywhere, and also at the data center area, but not only. So yes, it's there's a mature area, and yes, in continental Europe there will be a need of flexibility. Maybe not the same use case, maybe not FFR, maybe something different, but yes, there will be a need, and we are prepared, we are ready. We just need now to so to speak wait for the market to get to this with yeah, as Karen said, much more easiness in terms of okay, how to enter the market, how to deal with it, how to go, and how much will I get, and how is the business model. But yes, there is a need of flexibility, clearly, even at the continental European area.
And one thing we would advocate there is, you mentioned, Leila, before the Energy Efficiency Directive. It makes complete sense that if you wanted to measure not the efficiency, but the sustainability credentials of a data center, it has to be a factor that you are grid interactive. If you have a data center that is contributing to the decarbonization of energy at a grid level, they have to be treated differently to data centers who are knowingly not. participating. So I think the directive should measure that as part of sustainability, and that becomes a transparent measure for all.
Yeah. That's part of the things we also want to integrate in the European Code of Conduct for data centers, and including a new parameter to show that yes, I mean I will support the grid, I will be grid supportive in a way to speak, and that's part of the things that we want to include at the European Code of Conduct level for data centers. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's, I mean, something that as smartEn, we of course are very aligned on, that it's important to look at the system efficiency, the overall system efficiency, and not of each individual device or resource like a data center. Because of course, if you're benefiting a decarbonized energy system, you're benefiting much more than, I think you put it as, only tending to your own backyard. Yeah, which is something that smartEn is completely aligned on, and also many opportunities also in the short term for in EU terms to get involved in. Are there any other regulatory? I mean, this is in terms of incentives, but are there any other regulatory barriers that that you would also like to mention still? I know as smartEn, we are looking a lot at the implementation of the clean energy package to make sure that this is transposed everywhere in a timely way. Is there anything specific you would like to mention still?
No, I think we've covered it. I fear the day, and I do not want to see the day where people looking for data center planning approval, and that this becomes a factor, because it's not beyond thinking that could be a scenario. And I think that would be an unnatural constraint on what is at the heart of our digital economy. A lot of people mistakenly just see data centers as energy consumers. They forget that as we move to cryptocurrencies, where does it all live? Where do the all applications live in our digital economy? It's all in the data center. And every time you move data to a data center, it's managed more efficiently there than anywhere else. So I think if the data center industry is more proactive and engages with the facilities that are out there, the requirement for more stern regulation is avoided. So it's a smart thing to do. The other little point is that we talked about data centers a lot. Let's remember how we connect to data centers. It's the telecom networks that actually still have a multiple of energy consumption versus the data center industry. So we should think broadly in terms of the ICT sector, not only the data centers, but also the telecom networks by which we connect to those centers. All should really embark on a similar journey to help decarbonize the electricity they consume.
Okay, well, thank you both. We are reaching the end of this webinar. I think we covered a lot of very interesting points about data centers, and especially what the UPS can do for a decarbonized energy system. So really thanks to both of you. For the participants, a recording of this webinar will be made available. I assume the slides it's okay to share with our participants.
Yeah.
And a question still is the Bloomberg study that you mentioned, that is also available to the audience.
Sure, I can make both. I can make them both available to you, Leila, and you can send it out with the slides, no problem, or they can be found on the website.
Oh, they can be found on the website, okay. Also, of course, our publication from smartEn features a case study from Eaton and from Schneider Electric, as well as 9 other case studies with data centers covering different topics. So for those interested in data centers, there's still a lot more reading to be done that can be done, not giving homework. Well, thank you for your time today. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you to the audience for sharing, and have a nice rest of your week.
Thank you, Leila. Thank you, Neil. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.